mean, the topic is a very sensitive topic that we will analyze today from various angles. And I mean, due to this very unfortunate situation happening in our neighborhood, you know, after like almost 2 months, we thought that it is worth to talk about, you know, what is the impact of the service sector, particularly the business services sector we are working in, we are all impacted that. We are working in the sector, what is the future, what is happening, what the companies are experiencing. And I guess we will talk about, you know, we'll have many valuable thoughts about the future, what we think could potentially happen. Although no one has a crystal ball, but there's a lot of valuable thoughts here, you know, and hopefully we will also have a lot of valuable thoughts within our audience of what we think could potentially happen and what is the impact on the sector, geopolitical as well as economic impact related to the sector. So, saying that, I will start with the first tricky question, and that's to you, Julie, because British Petrol was one of the companies, the first companies, stopping many subsidiaries in Russia. So, saying that, what is the impact of that on your company and on the Budapest service center or any service center actually?
Well, I don't know if maybe it's going to be easier like this. So basically, the Ukrainian war started on the 24th of February. And 4 days later, BP announced its exit from Rosneft shareholding, meaning that the company was not ready to support a country that is openly having an aggressive assault against the souvenir country. So that was one of the biggest announcements of BP when the war broke out. And besides that, our CEO, Bernard Lumi, resigned from his board membership, and the previous CEO, Bob Dudley, resigned from his board membership of Rosneft as well. And it's going to be the first quarter when no Rosneft results are going to be included in BP's results. We are looking forward to seeing it, how it's going to impact the company's financials. But if you are asking me that how the exiting from Russia, so what happened beside it, because BP had operations in Russia as well on its own without any shareholding in any Russian companies, it means that BP had a significant presence or has a significant presence in Russia from its Castrol operation side, but the operation has been ceased since the 28th of February. Of course, we are not transferring any oil products to Russia either. And if you are asking then what is the impact of it on our service center, so clearly all the sanctions which are in place at the moment are impacting our finance teams, impacting procurement teams and supply chain teams. So we have to pay extra attention to that, and it creates a lot of extra workload for our teams. And at the beginning, when the sanctions came to light, clearly we had to look into that what it means from financial perspective. We had to look into from supply chain perspective. You will not believe, but quite a number of Russian-owned companies, I mean transportation companies are present in Europe, and all these companies are sanctioned. So it means that we had to find very quickly new companies who we can work with in order to be able to deliver our products to our customers.
And so basically the impact on the center here in Budapest is huge because of the workload itself and how you are able to cope with that. So what is the best practice to share here?
Well, what we are having incident management teams at different levels of the organization. And these incident management teams were meeting daily 2 times at the beginning when the sanction came into light, because that was the time when we had to put the practices in place. And now what we are doing is that we are looking into the sanctions on a daily basis, because what is very important to operate in a compliant manner. And this information is cascaded down to the relevant teams. But the regularity of and the duration of these meetings, of course, shortened through the course of the time. But we are monitoring the situation on a daily basis. And if there are new sanctions in place, we immediately take action. So what it looks like that we are having different level of incident management teams. We are having at the global level, at the executive management level, and we are having that at a unit level. For example, I'm talking about Castro, because I'm part of that organization and I'm involved in these activities. And we are meeting daily, maybe it's just 5 minutes, looking into the sanction, looking into the financial implication, procurement and supply chain implication, and immediately the instructions are delivered to the respective team. That's what we are doing, and it seems to be working efficiently.
Thank you. Actually, not sure how many you are aware about the business services sector related to Ukraine, so how many service centers operate in Ukraine, what they do in general. So I tried to gather quite a lot of data available on the market today from various studies. And apparently, in 4 bigger regions, towns where pretty very, very good universities, obviously there is a talent pool on board. So they are operating quite a few, or they did operate quite a few service centers, traditional service centers with the traditional scope, just as we do here in Hungary and anywhere else. And also a lot of IT tech related service centers and also R&D centers. So the question is, anyone, but maybe you can start, what do you think? How can they operate these centers now? So basically, 24th of February was an event. Since it is going on, what happens in this case with these companies?
Okay, thank you. We are just monitoring what's happening, and I think what you just said, it's quite generous. It's a kind of compliance requirement to be true from Russia, and of course, normal working conditions also very bad in clients. So it means that many companies withdrew their operation from Ukraine as well. I think when talking about business service sector, we always have to take into account 2 effects. On one hand, how the sector itself is affected, so whether these centers can operate in the normal location in a normal way. But there is also a special effect relating to the industry which that particular service center works in. So sometimes the basic profile of the company is much more hit, and it means that the effect on the sector is very much diverse according to the basic profile of the company, according to the location of the centers, and a lot of other issues. So we would think that business services are very much affected, but if we just list the industries, energy industry, automobile industry, agriculture are the most affected sectors, and a lot of other industries which relate and build on this basic materials of fertilizer production, for example, was also in the press. So I would say that it's a diverse effect, and if you watch closely what was the situation in Ukraine, there are probably more than 100 or a little bit more service centers, but the average FTE within these centers are quite low. So I think even in the past, multinational companies were a little bit risk averse and didn't made 2 big centers in Ukraine. So according to my knowledge, the largest center is belonging to Nestle with over 1,000 employees, which is only one among the 100 or more than 100. So I would say that it's a limited risk. On the other hand, these people should be transferred and these operations should be somehow replicated in another country. So I would say that it may quite significant effect. And well, this is what's happening now. According to my knowledge, other companies also transferring back people from their local people and also their international staff. So it's yeah, in the middle of this transfer.
I'm just trying to, being actually in this business right now, I'm trying to visualize this the business continuity plan, right? From one day to another, you have a mass of companies trying to sustain the business, serve their clients, and do something. Obviously, we are, let's say, post-COVID. So COVID was the greatest PCP for any of us, I guess. But do you think that companies took any extra additional measure when it comes to business continuity?
Let me step back on. So when Ukraine was founded after the collapse of USSR, then you should know that there were more than 50 million people, 50, and now it's less than 40. So I wanted to go a little bit more why business service centers were not so much focusing on Ukraine, because 10 million Ukrainians were just coming to Western Europe, mainly in Poland, 2-3 million, but other Western European countries as well. Second point, the economy stopped completely. Please don't forget the men should fight. They are not allowed to come out. So when you see in big four-wheel SUVs, the Ukrainian number plate families with men, then they were not allowed to come out. But this is an extremely corrupt and very bad environment country. So they could come out because they bribed the border police. So why I'm telling you, because the average people, of course, couldn't flee, and they should have stayed there. And this is a big problem, of course, for the IT, mainly because, of course, most of the IT employees are men, and they are fighting. They are with gun with their hands, and they are defending their homeland, which is quite sad. So there is no business continuity actually. So of course, companies try to take care, and I know a lot of them who are saying that come to Budapest or any other country of Europe, and we will hire you and we will give you. For example, in Poland, Randstad, we were having many thousand employees from Ukraine, and we said to them, listen, go home, we give you an extra week of salary, take your family back, and so on and so on. But this was extremely difficult time for them. So the people who are already there, it's one thing. The second thing was, of course, I think the economy of Ukraine just collapsed. So there is no business continuity anywhere. I don't think so. Coming back this parallel thing in Hungary, I'm in the industry like 11 years, and to be frank with you, I never remember any cases when in location scouting we were competing with Ukraine. So coming from HIPAA or from the big four companies, we were not facing any time the competition of Ukraine. So this is not an interesting question. I was just remembering Romania, Poland, of course, Czech Republic, you name it. So even Portugal. So there were a lot of different countries, but never ever was Ukraine. That's why when you are saying that who are these centers, I have the impression that they are mainly attached to the local production entities already, like Nestle. You know that the Boci Choki, the most famous Hungarian chocolate, is produced in Ukraine. So that's it.
Actually, I don't have the exact details in front of me. I just have the snapshot, my pushka, the cheat sheet in English, right? I always get used to saying pushka. So it's actually close to 60 BPOs and close to under 100 R&D centers. And we will talk about it a little bit later, but basically the IT and technology talent is poor in Ukraine, and particularly technology centers are there present, were present, sorry, and we will refer to that. But basically, so what I'm just thinking, about the BCP. You say there is no BCP for sure. If war happens, people go, they try to survive, right? But on the other side of the world, there is an operation that there are certain clients which obviously are understanding there is a war, but there are duties to be fulfilled and managed. So are you aware, you any company which may actually deliver any services out of Hungary remotely, or you are rather hearing about any other solutions to manage? such a service which was released in probably part of this region, in Ukraine or in Russia, it doesn't really matter.
I think that it's going to be very surprising to find the number of companies using their operations, because even though quite a number of people fled away from Ukraine, but significant amount of the people returned to Ukraine. That's what we are getting. And like even stuff in Ukraine, for example, we are working together with distributors, and they completely resume their operations. The biggest challenge for us is that how we can deliver the products to them in a compliant and safe way. And now they are completely resumed their operations. And what we heard, as you know, that number of raw materials for car production is located in Ukraine, and now they resume their operations as well. So companies are finding the way how they can resume their operations, especially if their centers are not in the area where the war is happening. Basically, the war is happening in the eastern part of Ukraine, but the companies who are operating in the western part are starting to resume the operations where possible, mainly with females, because males are really holding guns and defending their, as Shador said, defending their countries. And we experienced that quite a number of female who came to Hungary, and after a while they returned to the Ukraine because they said that that's their home. It's really interesting to see that. But companies who are not operating in the eastern part of Ukraine are resuming their operations. That's what we are experiencing.
Channeling was just about the talent pool, because actually recently, a couple of weeks ago, as part of HOA, we had a roundtable discussion with few leaders of the companies about, what to do, how to support the talent pool from UK to Hungary. And what is really the long-term effect of this? Whether it is really a talent pool for us, is it an interim situation? How many people really want to stay, and how can we help them? Can we help them really to find jobs in service sector, in this particular sector? So how do you see the situation?
Just read this morning in the newspapers that 100,000 Ukrainians will be welcome in the construction industry. So I think if anybody is dreaming that the scarcity will be solved through Ukrainians, I have not the impression. So most probably there will be a lot who will stay, and we are always celebrating and glad that if we manage to place an Ukrainian refugee as a temporary worker or a permanent placement, and we are extremely happy, and we try to do our best. But we have some handicaps. The first is our beautiful language, and although all of us we spoke already at the age of 1 fluently Hungarian, unfortunately somehow these 7 other billion people are incapable to do the same quickly. No, joke aside, most of them, of course, they go to Poland, because what I understood from them that within half a year they can be fluent and they can work without any problem in Poland. But I am running Czech Republic, and this is the same situation. So many 100,000s are not just staying there, but they are working as well. So shortly, the long story, what I see yesterday, I read that 300 refugees arrived to Budapest, and some of them will work, and we try to help them, and we have the Ukrainian subside. We hired as well an Ukrainian colleague who you are dialing in and can answer in Ukrainian. So yes, we are there, but we don't see a big flow in. And the other thing which is very interesting, maybe we didn't try hard. You should know that we had a network in Ukraine of allied agencies, and fortunately they are just disappeared. Okay, so I don't know what's going on with them today, but they had a lot of difficulties to deliver us other languages than English. So, and then the Budapest centers are famous for the multilingual skills. So when we were looking for French and German and Dutch and Spanish and all these profiles, they were very, very rare and few. So that's another, I think, handicap. And the last handicap, I cannot avoid it, but we are not famous in Ukraine, and we are the welcoming nation. And although we on our particular corporate or private level, I really reject this war, and I cannot forgive the Russians what they are doing now, but on political level we are not famous for, and then that's why the not just the size of the border, how many kilometers the common border with Ukraine, but as well for other reasons, the poor people they are not escaping through us. So if they escape through us, then they go on to other countries. So I don't think, short long story, that we will find huge solutions. So many thousands of people could work for us. Although I know that the open vacancies are there, so we could use them.
It's very interesting what you are saying actually, because if you talk about Poland, right? In Poland, it's close to 380,000 or so people working in this sector, and basically close to 20% of Ukrainian. And I was recently in Poland, and I see what's going on there. We see how they welcome Ukrainians, but indeed, in every corner shop, somewhere, somehow, there is a Ukrainian worker. So it's amazing that they are able to integrate immediately. And they are trying to learn the language or absorb the language very fast, but they already did. So from that perspective, obviously the dependence, because we talk about people returning and returning to the country, who is staying, who is living. So the business services sector there is heavily impacted by this move, because people who did work went back to fight, big part of this population, the talent pool. But at the same time, more and more is fleeing, particularly women, who try to find a job in Poland. But for us, I mean, HOA also established a site, by the way, just for your information, it's just HOA also established a site. We try to obviously pass the message as much as we can, where companies can post open jobs, and we are trying to post and advertise. So as probably Randstad and other companies did that, but we don't see many people interested to be able to fulfill the jobs which we hire for, or the language requirement which we hire for.
Just some points. On one hand, I like to confirm what you were just saying, that probably the largest BCP challenge at the moment is in Poland because of the migration of the Ukrainian workforce back to Ukraine. Because for Ukraine, Poland is like Germany for the Polish, that many of their workforce work in the other country. Again, there are different data about the Ukrainian business services sector, but it seems that even if the labor arbitrage was large, because all these brochures about the Ukrainian BCP market try to just emphasize that 1/4 of the labor cost applies in Ukraine, compared even to Central Europe. So it is very, very lucrative. Still, companies were reluctant to move there. As Shandor says, mostly those companies which got production there put their services also in that country. Otherwise, especially after the Crimea annexion, they are quite cautious to move there. So on one hand, it's question how much work should be transferred, and we also have to speak about the Russian as part of the sector. And there is another challenge if Western companies try to migrate the Russian workforce abroad. There are two challenges, in fact. One, how to mix them with the Ukrainian workforce. And I got a story, not from this sector, but from the transportation industry, where there was physical fights among people coming from Russia to Ukraine. The other challenge, which is an ethical challenge for companies, whether it is okay or not to work with the very same Russian people who are not in Russia anymore. So whether it is just playing with the sanctions, so avoiding the sanction, or it's a legal and mostly ethical business practice to continue as nothing happened. And just remember that Russian athletes, sportsmen are forbidden to participate on international competition. So for me, it's a little bit similar situation where we move people from Russia to another country and we continue work with them.
I'm moving people. I think from our perspective here in Hungary, at least, based on the information I'm trying to collect, is that there is less Ukrainians in the service centers, more Russians in the service centers. But nevertheless, there are different political views, opinions between people. So, really, any best practice? How do you handle the situation? How to manage teams with different political views in such situation?
It's not really easy, especially in the present situation. I think that we are in a very lucky situation because I think that most of you have heard about that BP is very much supporting diversity, regardless whether we are talking about political views, religion, sexual orientation, belonging to any kind of minority. And basically it's in our values how to appreciate each other. And if we are experiencing that people are fighting against each other due to different political views, due to belonging to any kind of different minorities and trying to take advantage of the other because of that, it's something that we cannot tolerate.
What do you do? Have you experienced situations like this, or are you aware?
Luckily, no.
Luckily, no.
Luckily, no. Even though we are having Ukrainian citizens and Russian citizens in our organization, but they went together to have the immigrants.
Okay.
So we are in this very lucky situation. And just to share another example, the Russian country manager contacted me, whose son is studying in Hungary, that how his son can volunteer to have the Ukrainian. So I think that we are in a very, very good situation because our teams, without any exception, offer their team building budget to support the immigrants. Truly as one team, without single exception.
I would like to tell you, I think it was a best practice from the beginning at Randstad in Poland. We hired psychologists and they met the Russians. They were working in the same, and Ukrainians, and they were working in the same team. Sometimes the Russian was there, for example, in one team, the manager and the members of the team were Ukrainians, and try to put the fish on the table and try to really see. And believe me that as soon as the people have the same information, then more or less they are okay. The problem starts when I am reading the Russian newspapers, and this is a completely different universe. But an average, I'm not trying to make any parallels with Hungary, but they have a completely different universe about this. We don't put in a war, you know that. And this is when the one problem starts. The second is what I would like to tell you. This is a war. When people are dying, women are raped, there are cruelty, there are revenge, and very, very hard feelings. So just imagine if something happens to your family member, how will you react? The problem, how the human nature is reacting, is very dangerous. This is what is happening, you know, back and forth. I don't want to justify the Russian soldiers, but see, some of them was killed and immediately they were revenging. And this is a complete vicious circle. And this is just case where the human being is going out of the mind and you cannot control. And that is what I am afraid sometimes, that if you have mixed teams, something happens in one of the families, then how they can react afterwards. So I think that was why I'm telling you this story, that it was from the beginning with the hotline and the psychologist and trying to really follow the people, help them in these difficult times when they see that the homes are bombed and family members are dying, and how they will react, and just to make sure that they can process all this information. Because again, we cannot imagine what war means.
And I think that most of the companies who I talked to, everyone is having a special hotline for people from Ukraine and from Russia as well. And we are having this hotline like in the last 12 years. And we are providing that there is a special employee assistance program where people can talk to psychologists, financial advisor, and anything what they need. And then besides that, what we have launched roundtable conversations with Hungarian investors, like who are talking about how to handle these situations with professionals, and we have never seen such an interest to attend these sessions like before. Even though we are having the employee assistance program available since the beginning of it, since the beginning of our operations. Of course, COVID brought a big increase in the use of it, and now we are having additional sessions, and BP is a company of 2,500 people and 800 participants of each session.
So that shows me that obviously it's not only the Russians and the Ukrainians,
No.
but also any other nations. Really.
Exactly, and we cannot forget that at the beginning of the war, Hungarian very panicked, or that's what we got from our teams as well. That people felt that we are so close to the war, and it can happen to us anytime. That's another threat, that how you are managing when people feel that their security is at risk.
Actually, when we are talking about examples, it was a very interesting one as well. With me, I was mentoring someone just from one day to the other decided to move to Portugal because it's further from Ukraine. And just from one day to the other, she was just not able to cope with that mentally, with the fact that anything at any point of time can happen. So, and she is Hungarian, so I guess that the feeling, the psychological feeling is there under our skin, depending on who is and how is able to deal with it.
Just one thing, because I was happy to hear these best practices from Amsterdam, and I think this is what companies can do and of course must do. It doesn't mean that it just eliminate any risk, because the war is so cruel and so unpredictable that things can happen which cannot be closed out, even with such measures and very good practices. On the other hand, I really advise any other companies to do this. Hire psychologists, make hotlines, information sessions, and the like. Probably also useful to localize, to make some kind of discussion groups, to just speak out and or their concerns and other kind of problems can be just discussed with colleagues. So I think this should be done, and as Yuri mentioned, there is a real demand also from the workforce to have this.
While we are talking about the war and the impact of war, so from foreign direct investment when it comes to the sector in Hungary, I mean, but according to the recent studies, is the one I read from 2021, Hungary was one of the 10 on the list, not the first 3, 4, but within the first 10 when it comes to interest of foreign direct investment for the business services. So what's your view? What will be the impact on us going forward? Maybe you react.
Well, very difficult to predict. I think till now we were speaking about the potential increase of the Hungarian service sector because people can migrate here or jobs can be transferred. And I think the Hungarian business services sector scored quite well in the COVID period because we could take over jobs, for example, from India and from other countries due to the flexibility of the workforce, the infrastructure, internet network, and the like. So we can expect some increase, but in longer run, I think that our region is a little bit more cautiously handled. So it means that could be that even these countries, Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, would be viewed as, I wouldn't say that a risky place, but a place where companies should also take account the BCP opportunities, how to transfer operation from here to another country.
Is it something you think in mind already?
Well, I know at least one company which got this internal project at the moment to find BCP solutions for Hungary and some other countries in the region. But I think it's normal business risk, so I wouldn't exaggerate it. I think they want to protect themselves, so I don't think that the risk level is so high that it require immediate action, but at least they should have this kind of plan as a contingency.
If I translate what you are saying, so basically for us, it doesn't look like we will actually on the list for the countries which could take potential workers or remediation to Ukraine, but we will be the one looked at when it comes to BCP, whether we are the right location on the wrong ground.
I would differentiate between the short term and the middle term. So in short term, I think we can increase our volume.
Would you define short term?
Well, in the coming month or in 1 year, I think it is possible to take over some jobs from Ukraine or Russia. On the other hand, and we are speaking, also the experts say that the war can go on, can last for years. So I wouldn't say the same for the next 3 years as well. But again, it's very, very difficult to predict. Of course, there are a lot of political views, and usually general managers, business people think rationally. On the other hand, it could be that these decisions are made far from the region. So there are a lot of effects in this kind of thinking, what I just mentioned. And again, I wouldn't really exaggerate the meaning of this kind of thinking.
I'm always exaggerating and irritating people. This is my job. Actually, if you are thinking from a little distance, I think in the future, near or longer future, on a business perspective, nobody will choose Ukraine anymore. Either way, Russia wins, Ukraine wins, it will be always a risk. Other question is the political will, whether the governments are asking us to invest and help the Ukrainian economy in the future and help like a Marshall Plan from a perspective. This is another story. Secondly, what is our perspective? We are, my colleagues are sitting almost every week at the HIPAA, and we are watching at the foreign direct investments. And many years we didn't have so many new centers coming through the Big Four or through HIPAA. Not many new. The last 1 year, there are many which popping up, and they are really considering seriously when they decided for Budapest. So I think there is a bright future, and I'm always repeating the same story, that if you compare to Romania, Poland, or Czech Republic, the number of employees in the business service sector is lower per 100,000 than in Hungary. So we have an advantage still, so we are not saturated like the other countries. This is one question. The second is, what is the longer future? So shall we go on the value chain, and we are having more and more added value jobs, and we are can we do that? Yes, but still, when I am seeing so many APA specialists being hired, 6 years ago on the Randstad Award, I was talking about the automatic accountancy. So when it is coming, so somebody told us that a couple of years ago that 47% of the jobs will disappear. Then it will start. 89% of the Hungarian companies in the beginning of the year reported to us they would like to increase the labor force. So still the companies, short and long story, don't have a real human labor force plan for the coming years. So they are panicking, they are improvising, and we are growing, by the way. So if you compare to other Eastern European countries, we are really quite fine, in the foreign direct investment. So I am positive, but still, I will really invite the people to let's think about it. What is the need in 2 years? And I know it's very difficult to predict, because you have no idea about the migrations of the jobs, because it's popping up one day to the other, and you volunteer and you say, okay, I will do that, and you say, okay, we will see how to pass the bridge when we get to the bridge. That's what we are saying at HIPPO as well. So we didn't know how the BMW factory will be built in Debrecen, but let's get it and we will find out how to hire these 4,000 people. The same in the business service sector, but it's not very clever, by the way. So we should plan how many people, what kind of education, and I think it's getting better and better, by the way, the skilling, reskilling, upskilling of the people, that's okay. But let's calculate and let's not be shy. Let's be very clear. We have 1.5 children per family, and none of the European countries is reproducing itself. So we should see how we can complete our labor force from Ukraine, from Serbia, or wherever. And I would like to tell you one thing which is really shocking me, and this is, I think, can change the world completely of the labor. And this is the story of the Netherlands and Canada versus Brazil and India. I'm telling you what's going on at Randstad. There is such a big scarcity in Western Europe that they don't go for the labor arbitrage to other countries, but they are stopping their operation and they are ready to hire people at any price just to keep on going. And what we are doing at Randstad nowadays, it is of course IT specialists first. We are hiring Randstad payroll Indian IT specialists in Bangalore and Delhi or wherever you can imagine. And we are paying to them Dutch salaries, living in India. And of course, Randstad, the Netherlands, are gathering the money from the Dutch companies for these IT specialists. We are having a nice percentage, of course, making good money. But more importantly, the candidate is not having the 4 times less salary like in Ukraine, and this is 10 times less maybe in India, but they are having a Dutch salary, or Canada and Brazil the same. So Canadian salary for the Brazilians because they are in the same time zone. So that's why we are defining them. And I think this can make a revolution in the world of work. And this might be interesting for Hungary. What is our role? Are we the Netherlands or are we the India? Either way, this will change.
And I think that it's already started, just to build on what Sándor said, because if we are thinking over, if we want to hire Spanish speakers, where we are bringing the people from South America.
I see.
But the fact is that if we are talking about the long-term future of this sector, then what kind of education we need if we want to keep the shared service sector as a flourishing business in Hungary. And how we can attract foreign talents in the country, and how we can nurture our own talents in the country. But that's a different conversation.
When I was listening to Sándor, it was just many ideas popping in my mind, one by the other, because I think it touched upon like various verticals. And one which I would like to return to, basically the effect of the war on us in the long run, the sector in Hungary. But also about the talent, right? When you talk about employing IT people from Bangladesh or India for that salary from Holland, I mean, does this centralized model make sense, really, on the long run for us? Or are we just nurturing the AP and AR accountants forever?
If I may start, I think it's indeed a revolution. And I think it's also a kind of BCP mechanism. So even if we keep some kind of center, but if the workforce, the main resource is distributed, you are one step ahead to protect yourself. And it also applies to the Ukrainian workforce, in fact, because you mentioned that they are very strong in IT.
Yeah.
And these people still work until Elon Musk provides Starlink internet connection in the country. It is possible to work as freelancers to any IT company in the world. So being in Ukraine and it was a model even before the war. So I think it can continue, and it can also spread over the business service sector, and it could be a model that people will be much more dispersed. And in fact, I got an interesting analogy. I might venture to tell you. It is like in the IT business, because we got cloud computing with the data centers, but these are still big locations. But the world progresses towards edge computing and data fog and such kind of things, and commercial computers like those in the room can be used for complex operations. So this way you can a little bit further protect yourself and distribute the resources, and it could be applied to the service sector as well.
So, it was a very taboo question, I guess, to ask whether this central model makes sense, because, you know, a couple of weeks ago, one of the breakfast topic was about the future of work. Future of work, we were talking also about remote hiring. Remote hiring, I mean, from Page to Budapest. And probably I can count on my 5 fingers how many companies does that today in Hungary. Okay? So when we talk about ideas of remote, decentralized model, hiring people across the globe, I mean, I have a feeling that for us here in Hungary, it's like, oh my God, it's the next century. We'll never get there.
I don't agree. One starts and then everybody will follow. So I am telling you something. I started 6 years ago, the small operation in Romania, 9 people now. I have 150 consultants in Romania, and 25 out of them, they are working remotely, of which 85% are on target. Timisoara, without any office. Timisoara, Tenesvár, Jászvásár, Jás. So all these cities we are covering, and they are working extremely well. Of course, there is some secrets how they keep the contact and how to motivate these people, but it's going on. And I started in Hungary. I have been Rákóczi, Falva, a consultant. So have you ever heard about this middle of nowhere in Szolnok? And it's working fine, and we get to just talk about it in a way in Szeged and so on. So and then let's go further on to foreign countries as well. So why not? And why not? And we are very open. And by the way, of course, there were some rules and situations, but I'm pretty sure that legislation will change, and you will be able not just a freelancer and make a company and then you can work abroad, but to have as an employee, and it is possible as well. So on Rasa payroll, there are many temporary workers who are actually, you know, the representative in Hungary of some companies, French and so on. So they are working in Hungary, Hungarian. They are getting the Hungarian social security, but they're getting a French salary, by the way, which is the future, I think.
What about the future, right? Because, you know, first to make a step of doing something, creating something, whatever it is, being centralizing, let's say in Hungary, right? It's always about the company strategy. So the company strategy, majority of these new entrants is about hiring tons of AP and AR, and I don't know what accountants, in order to start somewhere. And it didn't change. 25 years passed and that didn't change. It goes exactly the same way, with the same methodology, with the same support needed, with the same learning lessons. And what will change this? What will change? What should happen in order to change this? So in other way, will the current situation, or even this geopolitical situation which we are in, or the political situation which we are in, will this have an effect of the mindset change and changing everything, the way we plan to work in this sector?
I think that it will change. And we were talking a lot about BCGs. But when any companies will experience when the country is truly down, where they are operating, where their business services is operating, where their critical processes are run, like APA processes are run, that's going to be a big trigger point to think about the method when I'm not having that many people at the same location. I find a way that because companies, what I can see are afraid of is that how I can create my company culture, how I can cascade down my strategy, how I can get the right level of engagement. It's usually about the company's culture. Why people or why company think that they need centers. And I think that once this situation will happen, for example, worst case scenario, what happens if the war comes to Hungary as well, where companies are having thousands of employees operating critical processes of a company. I think that the present geopolitical situation gives this or triggers that thought process that how I can make my business operation more secure. and how I can create an environment where my culture is engaged by the newly joined people. But at the same time, I can assure that my business is running safely, regardless what happens in the countries.
First of all, I wanted to make a personal example, if it is not too unmodest, because during the COVID, I lived in Germany and worked back to Golden University through online classes. So I lived in Germany, I received Hungarian salary. Probably. Next time I will try to take the opposite. So, but in fact, it works. Concerning this future of work debate, I was happy listening it last time, and well, I think onboarding time should be reduced, and you should think of weeks or days instead of months and years to get the necessary qualification. Well, there are some benchmark which is, well, I cautious to mention, but Mechanical Turk of Amazon means that you can just get on board within minutes and work remotely on very well procedural jobs. So these are probably will be replaced by artificial intelligence in the future, but or testing companies that recruit people, also this kind of crowdsourcing basis. So it can work in simple jobs, but I think it is much more convincing and attractive to think about robotic process automation and similar techniques, which would eventually reduce the workforce, and those who are employed got a higher qualification. So I think future jobs can go to these two directions: either a much more qualified job, which is much more a kind of instructor job, teaching the robots and monitoring the robots, and the other one is absolutely mechanical. And for this kind of task, you can just crowdsource people all over the world.
Chandler, you just mentioned the secret that you are sitting and very good people. Almost about the foreign direct investment. So how do you feel? Is the EU membership a risk factor for us?
Shortly, the long story, I don't think so. We are not able to finance really ourselves without the EU funds. And we will go till the wall, and then we will get back Navracsics as a minister. We will arrest 3-4 small puppets in the ministries to show that we are fighting against the corruption, and we will be nice boys again, and then we will get yesterday in reality already. We made back step forward to get the EU funds. So I think this is how we are operating. We are the enfant terrible, the Szörnyű Jóska of the family, but this is how we are. I am pretty sure without EU membership, all these investments in the business service sector or in other industry would not come. Just to give you an example, I was fighting in Romania for a US company, and the final two was Serbia and Romania. And I gave my nasty one was saying, do you know that in Serbia you are hated? And he didn't remember the Serbian wars. This is American short memory. Really? You were having war against them, and they hate you. Yeah, really? But what about Romania? Romania, they love you. So, this will be the same. And believe me, there is one insight I would like to tell you. And this is what the HIPAA, which, let's be honest among ourselves, this is the institution which works really very good in this country. You know what they communicate, and we are helping them as well. This political stability, what is going on in Hungary, this is a big plus for in the eyes of the foreign investors. So there will be no big change in the VAT, no big change in the income taxes or the taxation overall. They are extremely friendly. So if there is a municipality is trying to play around, and the government is coming and say it's super important and good. You not receive anything from Samsung as a local tax. But anyway, we want this big investment very, very sharply and straight to the point. And you can criticize it and you cannot like it, but this is very efficient. We are very, very foreign direct investment friendly in this government and in this country. So I think that's all short long story. I don't think that we are like the Polish who are going through the wall and they don't stop at the wall.
No comment on that. I have Polish.
I know, that's
right.
fine.
Thank you.
Yes.
We have to have Polish.
Yeah.
Well, on one hand, I agree with what Chandler said. On the other hand, I don't only I just consider what could be the reality concerning EU membership or EU funds, but also how it is reflected in the mind of the decision makers. And I think it's more concerned how it is reflected in the head of a general manager in the US or everywhere. So you can say that this BCP plan I mentioned, it's an overreaction. And I subscribe for this interpretation. That could be a similar overreaction concerning EU membership issues as well. So this is why that we should also consider what the effect of this situation might be on responsible decision makers.
It was a very interesting query coming recently to us on about from our American location selection company. And they were looking for a location for close to 1,000 people signed up. And outside of the government, they had no idea what was in this country. So obviously that person had an idea where is Hungary on the map, but not much of information otherwise. So I just for details. So I can easily imagine that someone somewhere from US who's not really part of the regular communication, reading channels whatsoever, there's really not much of view of what is happening in the reality except the media. And the social media and the media in general can be very influencing. So one day to another, it can be a really hysterical decision to do and to approach and not to come, or if they are here, just to close. So I completely agree with you.
I think this is where our responsibility comes into the picture, that we should provide this kind of soft information to the potential investors concerning the war situation, concerning the EU situation. So I think there are a lot of things to do by everyone in the sector to turn back, or at least somehow fine-tune these views.
We talked a little bit about, or briefly about the Ukrainian tech skill set, which apparently they have a very large talent pool from very, very, very high tech people. So is Russians, obviously, but the Ukrainians too. And what I learned reading one of the articles recently, that many companies across the globe, Americans, but as well as Europeans, they just hire these tech people remotely, just jump on them immediately and try to hire them. Now, we are in the neighborhood, we have short supply of IT population and the ones who are here living elsewhere. So do you think it's a chance for us to ride this momentum or not?
I'm always saying if a question can be solved by money, then it's not a real problem. So if you pay more than the American company, then you will hire them. If
you
not,
stand in the queue, at least to show that you are there, hire them for better money.
Listen, there are some big Hungarian IT companies who are hiring worldwide, even from Silicon Valley. I can name them as well, and they are hiring international people, but not so many, because we are not leading the IT business. We are just a blue-collar worker in the IT. So we are executing. We are just coding. We are not really the top of the class. So I'm afraid that short and story, no, this is the answer. So we don't have too many chances against the world to hire these Ukrainians compared to Western Europe or everywhere else. Why would they come for us? The employer brand is not super duper on the Hungarian companies. Yes, if it's we're talking about BP, but this is not a Hungarian company, so it's an international company. So
What I mean, so if we are approaching it in a way that the companies registered here trying to employ the tech talent from Ukraine and try to put more value-add jobs in Hungary, is it a possibility for us?
if you pay so, I think so. So
There is a kind of concept in economics, switching costs. So if you do not take workforce here, but he or she remains in the original location, so there is less switching costs because you don't have to migrate, they don't have to find a flat, schools for the kids and the like. And also the local environment, including services, level of living and so on, means less because he's still in the same location. So I think money and then some other benefits could be a differentiating factor. So I got a little bit opposite opinion because if the Ukrainian guy already moved to the US, he won't get back to Budapest for a more lucrative salary. But if he remains in the same city in Kiev and just switch to a Hungarian company, why not? So I think it's easier.
Thank you. So I will, with this, I will close our panel and I will open for questions if there are any from the audience or from the online audience.
I would like to ask one. I don't know if I can be.
I give you the mic. I will
Yeah.
run around with the microphone so that others can hear, and also with mine.
Thank you.
So hi everyone, my name is Katalin. I'm here from Halden, Hungary. We are a smaller shared service center here in Budapest. And I think our biggest concern currently is not necessarily the geopolitical, but more the economical situation and the inflation of our salaries. So you can imagine, for example, I was hired just for the sake of it on a Scottish salary, but I am being paid in Hungarian forints. So I was just wanting to pick your brain about this situation. What do you think is going to happen in that regard, and how either the war or the geopolitical situation is going to affect this situation?
graduate from the Koreans University, but inflation is my favorite topic. So we have a very special situation. We were not traveling, we were not buying cars the last 2 years. So there is a big amount of money accumulated at the people who now we would like to spend it. So of course there's a big demand and very few cars, by the way, because they are messing up completely the car industry, their production with this ridiculous cheap stories and so on. Short term story, there's a big demand and not enough supply. But how long it will last? Because I think it's not that inflation, but very much a stagflation story going on. So price is up and economic situation is getting worse. So the question is, I am pretty sure that the inflation will not last forever because there will not be enough. So look at, for example, Germany. So if you check Germany, today we are having a big turnover in the retail shops. You go to and you are buying oil and sugar and chicken breast because you know that it will cost higher. So the turnover is there. But look at Germany. The prices are going up, but the overall turnover is getting down because there is no enough demand. So I'm pretty sure it will break down this inflation pressure. Did you renovate your flat or your house? Yeah, and then of course it was costing like hell of money. Look at today, you can find much easier a master, and then you can negotiate as of now. Yesterday, last year, I couldn't negotiate. I was happy that it came, and it will change. I think this inflation pressure is going on. But coming back to the salary question, you know, I was always increasing the salary that was announced the standard 1st of January. Okay? Last year, I got the approval from the board 1st of October already, and I will repeat in July already. Because we have to go on. There is a big demand, there is a scarcity, people are hiring, 89%, as I mentioned to you, all the companies are hiring. You love to pick the Randstad employees because you would like to hire, so you need some recruiters, and then where are you going to Randstad? Thank you very much. So we are increasing the salaries, but this is the thing, it's not just Randstad. everywhere. But I think it will slow down after a while. So you should go on with the price increase or the salary increases. But and then if you are having products in export because you are getting the money like in a BCC, you are having your services are counted in euros and beautiful 373 forints in the morning. So the Hungarian government is very nasty and evaluating. If you are focusing on your Hungarian market, then it's damn bad because we are living from this market. If you are an exporting entity, you are much fine. But okay, I wish to have you anyway at the end of the day. Short-term story, my opinion is inflation will go on for a while, but then if I think it will slow down and it cannot last forever.
Thank you.
Here is the official opinion now.
Yes. I cannot avoid this question because I'm from Cognizant, but I'm not a finance expert either. But two things what comes to my mind. On one hand, there is an inflation also in the Eurozone. So this is a factor. The other factor that, as you mentioned, if a center receives revenue in euro or in dollars, so it would be quite reasonable to fix the salaries to the euro or to the dollar value. Sorry, the employers, if I just called out sick list in now, I can do it because I'm from the university, but this would be my approach to this question.
Majority of the business cases actually are in dollar or in euros, so.
Exactly, and I think that if you are not increasing the salaries, then anyway you are going to pay that money for recruitment for Shandor.
Thank you.
For example, because your people are going to leave for companies, especially because we are having a situation in Hungary where we are talking about full employment in the country, people in the service sector are circulating, and if they are getting 5-10% increase, they will leave. So either you are paying it for your people to retain them, or you are going to pay the exact same amount for them.
Thank you.
Any other question?
Just back to the BCP question, you mentioned the very extreme BCP of moving out of the country, but this company is already looking at their current BCP like situation, like what if we don't have internet tomorrow, there is no more oil in the country or electricity. So if you have any insights what you're doing in that short term with your BCP because of the recent events.
If you don't mind, I'll take this question. Yes. I think that since COVID, BCPs are getting more and more importance and different scenarios are checked. And to be honest, as I know that it's an open and honest conversation.
No taboos. That's what we
No
always say.
taboos, exactly. So at the pre-COVID times, all companies had their BCPs, but most of them were kind of a like BCP. But since COVID, I think that it's taken much more seriously. And by this time, companies are having different scenarios. What happens if there is no electricity? What happens in a prolonged IT outage situation? What happens if the city is down, country is down, there is a pandemic, or a war? And now these BCPs are being tested. So what I can see that it's taken seriously, experts are hired to create the BCPs, critical processes are identified, critical players are identified. And I think that now we are getting back to the stage where we were 15-20 years ago, that what are the alternative locations from where the critical processes can be operated.
Yeah, thank you. Peter Kish from the University of Szeged, and I would like to introduce another dynamics, which is supply and demand to the market, because what we face in Szeged is that there are 22,000 students, 4,500 are graduating every year in faculties in terms of laser, physics, medical sciences, etc., etc. And of course, there are approximately 5,000 students from abroad. And they like the city very much. So, when we are talking to them, they say, hey, if there will be the appropriate workplaces to come to Szeged, we would heavily consider, to stay there. and then, you know, we would be very happy to get your input that basically and your advice, you know, what would be the right approach from the university actually to attract basically international companies, especially considering the high value added jobs, which is more the R&D centers, etc., etc. You might know we have a science park, there is the area ops, the laser physics, and you know because of many other colleagues, and you know our vision is that it would be great to have such a science park like in case of info park in Budapest that basically on one hand, you know, it's a great jobs for the university for the students, but in the same time, and this is secondary, also these companies would be a nice R&D partners of the corporates. So I would be very much interested in your advice, and thank you.
I can share the strategy of HIPAA if I may. I'm not an employee of HIPAA, but what we promote. I have a marketplace by the way by them already fixed for me. But yes. So joke aside. So what happened till now? It was very much you know, Székesfehérvár, Győr, and all the western part of Hungary was quite saturated, and then we were promoting Miskolc, Nyíregyháza, Debrecen. And then now we are going to the Pécs, Szeged, southern part of Hungary, and this is really the policy and strategy these days. And what I would like to tell you, and this is what we were talking as well, that I'm sharing my opinion that in Hungary there is only one city who is handling and tackling the foreign direct investor professionally in a 360 way, and this is Debrecen. Debrecen is having such a strategy and a very good visibility of professional treatment. None of the other cities are really on the level. So I am really trying to convince all the other cities to talk to Debrecen, to learn from them how they are promoting the foreign investments, and look at what they were doing. It is not just BMW, but if you go to their industrial park, and actually there are two, this is just amazing what they have done, and this is saturated, by the way. I would like to tell you just between among us. So shortly, the long story, I think what you are saying, there is, and it was harmonized, you know, with the Debrecen University, how many 10,000 of as well students there, how to promote, how to keep them in the city, and so on and so forth. They are benchmarking themselves to Nagyvárad, to Oradea, because they were the same size of the cities. And then they see it, how Debrecen is growing and how Oradea is fading out. So shortly the long story, I think there should be a really good strategy for these cities, because I feel that there is a lot of potential in Szeged, but we can go on with Békéscsaba, with the highway which is being built, and then we go to Pécs and Kaposvár and all this part of Zalaegerszeg. I think still a lot of potential in these cities for the BSc sector as well. I know that in Szexárd there is and in some cities, small cities, there are some starting points, but I think still that some potential there.
We had a very interesting experience with HOA, actually starting this initiative of improving foreign direct investment to certain, let's call it tier 2 sites in Hungary. And as part of this project, we could clearly see that as there is a demand, so there is a supply from the universities, and there are various talents, obviously. There are a number of languages available in this region, and it depends of which town you actually look at. That's how many languages you will get, and it may well be that out of 22,000 students, you will just get, as an example, you will get very solid English, but very limited of any other language. And ultimately, there are many factors here, because as you say, the towns, municipalities are not prepared to actually sell what they have. They don't have necessarily a complete understanding what they really have, and they don't necessarily have the complete understanding of who is their customer indeed, and what is possible for that region and what is not. So that the fact that there is 22,000 or 10, 15, X thousand students coming as a talent pool, it doesn't necessarily mean this pool is good for everyone, right? So like in Pécs or Szeged, when you have medical faculties, an ideal land for R&D or pharmacovigilance or pharma companies, for example, and extreme talent pool waiting to do things which they could possibly, you know, do for the service centers, but probably is not the land for 1,000 people, employee accountants or I don't know, IT tech companies, because the supply is just not there.
And I don't want to blame the Hungarian education system because I really like Judy. My two parents were teachers, and my wife is a teacher. So the problem is what we just discovered that 10 years ago, there were 2,080 people passed a French exam. Last year it was 900. 34,000 10 years ago German, 14,000 last year. 100,000 English and 60,000 last year. And this is not a demographic issue. We are just not okay in the education or in the motivation, or and this is not just because of the moratorium of the government that during COVID time you can get the diploma without French. This is a gradual fading out, and this is we must stop. I don't know how and who and why, but this is ridiculous. Basically, the problem is again that 7 billion others, they don't understand that the main language of the world is Hungarian. Then, so then it would be fine, you know.
Just a quick counter remark, because I'm not equally nor responsible for the Hungarian education. And we don't have French classes. That's well, somewhere up. Just under the decision who will lead portfolio. But going back to the BCP and also the second issue, I think we can approach it from two ways. At the global perspective, I absolutely agree what Yuri said, that companies should again think of multiple centers. So at the university, and this is our profile, we even now teach that it's quite suspicious that have only one global service center instead of 2 or maybe 3, when you can have this option to transfer the operation from one site to another, also being more close to the markets, also manage better the time zone differences and so on. So I think it would create in a global scale more centers, probably with less headcount, but more centers. And it's also a kind of opportunity for Hungary, and especially for the countryside centers. And here I would come with the local argumentation that it is not okay to have only Budapest and probably Debrecen. Let's take the Polish example. So the reason they could grow so remarkably is that they got multiple very, very strong cities. And I absolutely fan of supporting Szeged and also Miskolc, my hometown, and of course the other big and not so big cities, to provide these opportunities and attract more centers, even if the people will be more dispersed and delocated, and the remote work will not necessarily mean that in the other district the people at home work to the company, but probably in another country or in another continent. So this is a kind of phenomenon, a trend, but also would be a parallel trend to a little bit be more distributed concerning centers themselves. So this is what I think to be a rational reaction.
Talent pool can be very much more utilized, and the right talent pool at the right place. And I think this is what the companies are still not willing to see, that everyone wants to go to Budapest. I don't know why, but you know, there are plenty of opportunities for smaller centers. It's little bit crowded, very expensive.
That's what I'm saying in a second.
Exactly, and there is one thing that we cannot forget, that Hungary is a border-headed country. Everything is happening in Budapest, and we cannot forget about the demographic requirements as well. Because what they want to have is they want to go to theater frequently, they want to go out, they want to have a social life. And what they can see as the best opportunity, Budapest. I started my career in Debrecen, and I was devastated when I need to move to Budapest. It was one of the most difficult decisions in my life. I moved here much easier than from Debrecen to Budapest. But I think that it's another important factor that when you are deciding where you want to live, that what that city can offer you. And that's where I think that it's a bit beyond the business services sector's choice. But it's a bigger country politics, that how we can make Hungary big cities like Szeged, Miskolc, and I'm from Eger, like Eger, an attractive city to live in when the light doesn't stop at 8 p.m. Look, it's an important,
Yeah.
it's a, not, but in my age, it's still important to have some places open at 1 p.m.
Somewhere in the area, going to sleep at the.
Anyway, but anyway, it is important for this generation, for the age group between 20 and 30, 35, to have opportunities to enjoy life as well. And that's why I think that it's part of a bigger politics, how to make these cities, the country cities, more attractive for this population.
It comes back to politics, it comes back to branding. Yeah. Any other question? Oops, in the back. That's not that microphone, I will get this microphone.
Yeah. Hello everyone, Tomasz from JLL, and I'm a real estate professional. And I would like to just continue on that thought that you mentioned regarding countryside options. And because I recently saw an article that the company Marvel, the filmmaker, made an entire city for their employees somewhere in the United States. It's a model that is already working, and if we remember that there used to be big factories all over Hungary, and all around the factories there was the culture, like, I don't know, Város and these type of cities. So I know it's not an ideal situation right now to attract a new company and take them to the countryside, but if we are trying to do that, what do you think, what is the opportunity now to do this for companies?
Sorry for my understanding, I don't know what it is. Is it like a co-housing for offices?
Well, I'm thinking about real estate based, and no, I'm just saying that, for example, you want to create a good environment for your people, and I think that the countryside, bigger city can be a better option for them, living in Budapest. I was born and raised in Budapest, living in the countryside, but for example, my question is now that we are a bit pessimist about the war and opportunities, but if we're trying to be more creative and we're trying to think with an optimist head, what would you recommend companies coming to Hungary now in this situation? So if there is a company who is looking for opportunities in a situation like this, because there are some, what do you think? What is the opportunity now? Is there any opportunity?
There is an opportunity, and just coming back to what you are saying, but if you check, for example, Mercedes Manufacturing Kft. in Kecskemét, they created their kindergarten, they created their real estate block of flats, and then of course the business is feeling the smell of blood and the business, and of course there was a big international chain opening a hotel in Kecskemét, which is not the case in any other cities. So I think it's when you start, and it's like a snowball effect. It's getting. If you go to Kecskemét now and 10 years ago, you cannot recognize the city itself. So, and this is because Mercedes, and this is not because the ketchup factory there, because nothing was there, just the ketchup and Balancman. So I think this is going back and forth. And look at Debrecen, the same. So they opened in the Pallag a nice international school. So, and this is because of BMW. And then it's going back and forth, the story. Look at Audi in Győr, so what they are doing, for example, the best handball team of the world. So it's many different layers, and then the corporate is helping, then the government is, or the municipality is helping.
Give you one example, sorry, from Page recently, because we done this study there, and we can clearly see that there are opportunities for centers to come, mid-sized centers with a certain scope. there are no offices. There are no offices in Page which can be utilized. We are not talking about A category. There are no B category offices. Everything has to be rebuilt and renovated in order to do something. So is it an opportunity? Yes, it is an opportunity. If you build a smart science park or whatever for this particular reason, and Page is ready to attract investors, then it's an opportunity for you to do so.
That about in Szeged, you took the initiative and you built your factory, but there was not ready renovated the tobacco factory, but textile, okay, sorry. But in Debrecen, they built themselves, they invested, and they had patience to wait because many years it was empty, and usually there might be the government should help, in this case. But look at Miskolc is the same, so there is nothing. So I'm looking for a new office there, and then we cannot find anything basically, which is ridiculous. So there is no, if the private investors are not ready to invest in this venture, then sorry to say so, maybe it would be a good.
Readiness, right? Our readiness to attract business. We come back to this point.
But we
Where is our
are
readiness,
ready,
right?
I think. But if the center is coming and there is nothing, then they will not wait 5 years till the building is ready. BP was different because they were in Budapest already and they had time to, they had the strategic vision to go to Szeged. Different story.
Just to give another example, because I restarted my career in Debrecen. And for example, there's a Dohánygyár tobacco factory in Debrecen, which was renovated to welcome businesses. And I started my career at BP in Debrecen, and BP was one of the first companies who had a secondary site in Hungary, but city invested in building a new office, and we had the opportunity to take that one. So that was one of the reasons why the company chose that location. And just to reinforce the message of succession.
I think the essence of the question related to the residential area and services and not necessarily, but not only the offices, which is a problem, so I don't want to deny it. But what you were seeing is really because bad memories of Stalinváros and Dunaiváros and Leningrad. But luckily, Mercedes and Audi could change this view, and I think it's quite reasonable to think about this kind of new living and working centers. The question whether the business services industry is big enough, and especially the multiplicator effect which counts. So those automobile assembly plants could attract a lot of tier 1, tier 2 suppliers in the region. Generally, more people are working there, and specialized people, probably the turnover is also lower. So you can really create a new community there, and it could be a new residential area as well. Probably the biggest concentration of services is right here in the Váci Road, but there is no empty place to.
Váci Road.
Yeah. So so I think it would probably require cooperative strategies through HOA, or I don't know, to select an area where these centers can concentrate. For me, it is still a little bit questionable whether it would work. But well, maybe if there is a big production company nearby, a service center belonging to the production company, so I can create some kind of mixed industrial area.
Best practices to learn from our colleagues now, the half Polish ones, right? How to develop a town, the tier 4 town to attract business for service centers. Not even tier second tier, but tier 4 to attract business. Any other questions? Yep, there.
Sorry. Sorry, I'm Ella Kingalina from Motivac Solutions, and you spoke about fluctuation and how big problem is that a person gets more salary, 5%, 10%, it would leave, the person would leave, and you invest a lot also in hiring people. So do you have any measures in place to keep people working with you, or to offer them possibilities to to stay in the company? Other also, how do you motivate for people not to leave and not to cost you a lot of money and your brands as well?
Well, clearly we are having measures in place, and I think it's a well-known measure, which is employee engagement measure, and we are running a survey each and every quarter with 25% of our population participation, and it gives really good answers and insight that what are the things which are bothering the people, what are the things going well. And once a year, we are having an all-employee survey with everyone's participation. So clearly, the reason is to understand that what are the major motives of being engaged and not engaged. And besides that, what we are doing is that we are having exit interviews, because those are really giving really good insight that what is the motivation. Is it the salary? Is it the working environment, workload, company culture, name it? And that's what we are actively checking. We are benchmarking it with the other market participants' results or the data what we are having access to. And that's how we are building up our strategy. And we are checking our salary benchmark. Before 2022, we were checking it on an annual basis, but now we are checking it quarterly due to the inflation to see whether we are competitive in the market or not. And of course, besides that, what is very important and what kind of career paths you can offer to your people, what is the learning and development opportunities what you can give. Personally, I'm a true believer of continuous learning, because that's how we can keep attract talented people, and that's how we can attract talented people as well. But if you are not having the right career path linked to that, then that can be an issue. And how you can create future-proof knowledge in the organization, that's another very important thing. And many times how you can make sure that the people who you are nurturing in the organization are competitive in the market as well, because either way they are going to be kind of a brand ambassador. If another company hires them, saying that, oh my God, I don't want to hire anyone from that company, or they are saying that, wow, I want that person because I know that they are bringing great knowledge. So that's what is very important, and that's what we are putting a lot of energy to.
Thank you. On Thursday this week, we will present ninth time the Randstad Employer Brand Study, and I am not allowed to disclose so many things, but you should know that we are surveying, among others, more than 20 centers as well, what people think about them, what is the perception of these centers as concerning the salaries and all the other, and we see clear trends. What is important for the people in Hungary versus Europe, by the way, and now 9 long, very, very clearly. So I have always an anecdote, and my best anecdote is from Romania, from this engagement score, that the highest among 38 countries of Randstad countries, this is Romania 9, on a scale of 10. 9 is the engagement score, and it was a 50% attrition last year. So there are some limits of the engagement score as well. So, but okay, I don't want to make a joke out of it, but because we are 3 monthly or no, bi-monthly, we are running it. Short and long story, there are the 5 criteria we have to, or even more criteria you have to check. What is your answer to the employees? And the first is the salary, everywhere in the world, by the way. But there are all other things, and we are having some nice discoveries this year, how you can keep people longer in the company if they are in already. So that's what I'm showing you in this direction, because my colleague is sitting there and she will present on Thursday evening this result. So we publish it on Friday morning, so you can follow it and you can see. There are not the big secrets, but there are always some best practices what to do. And I'm not talking the big fluctuation, but everybody's talking about, which is like a pandemic story. So people, they say that we are happy there, so exit interview. I was happy, I like the colleagues, I like the challenge, I'm leaving. So why they are leaving? Yes, because I would like to go to what was it, Impala farm. You know, so What? Yeah, agriculture. So you are gathering the, okay, anyway, then you cannot explain. You can be the most motivating, engaging, nice career path, young manager program participant. So very soon you will be appointed manager, you get a company car. Okay, I'm going to the farm to work. So that's why I'm saying it is not because of joke, but you have to calculate with some attrition in advance. You must not be heard that she or he is leaving you, because this is normal. So how you can have again a strategic plan, how you replace, and please start today. So I have 150 consultants in Hungary. I know that how many will leave this year. I know how many will be pregnant, not because of me. But we know, we calculate it, and we act in advance. And the good thing is that by the time they are really giving notice, we are having already the replacement. That's my best advice.
And some level of attrition is healthy.
And Julie is completely right, some attrition is healthy, and sometimes very good at it, and 80-20%, that's what usually we say. You promote 80% inside, but get 20 new blood as well, because it always helps to have new things.
I have heard several strategies. It was also very interesting for me as well. So on one hand, to calculate with some kind of attrition. On the other hand, also to learn like exit interviews and even rationalize that, okay, some attrition is healthy, but you can also predict some people to leave, and the consulting company I'm most familiar with provide a software which predict churn. So based on big data on employees can
Chandler should utilize it.
show up some people who are the most at risk. So it is also a way to just tackle the same problem.
Thank you. We are approaching our time, so I would like to close, and thank you very much for being with us, and thank you, our dear audience, to be with us. And there is one remark I would like to mention. Shandor, you are over the study, so you can tell your experience. HOA is actually running the business outlook, quarterly business outlook survey. So we sent to our members, and also it was published on the LinkedIn. The survey is about the future of the sector in 5 years, and it is based on the fast food analysis. So we really try to approach from various angles to see of what the general managers and HR directors of the companies in the sector think, where we are going, what will be our future in 5 years. So if you have the time, I would strongly encourage you to look at it. It is a bit to think about, so it's not an automatic click survey, I can admit that. But there's a lot to think about, really, about our future. Thank you very much. And yeah, if you would like to still chat, opportunity is there. Thank you.
Actually,